So Illumin's Q3 results are out, and today we'll take a look at them to see how this investment thesis is progressing. Now, in case you don't know, I'm invested in Illumin. I bought this stock around here, so I'm around what? 16% positive, but as I've already told you, I expect a much bigger return from this stock. Oh, and by the way, if you don't know this company, Illumin, I recommend you this playlist in which I'm covering Illumin's investment thesis from scratch. Before we begin, just reminding you that this is not investment advice, okay? But anyway, let's talk about Illumin's Q3 results. So, total revenue grew 22.6%, which is great. But here we need to take a closer look at the details because a good portion of this growth here is being driven by the self-service business division, which has shown a remarkable growth of 64.2%. And this segment is especially important because, as we've discussed before, it is the most scalable part of Illumin's business, by far. As the company itself has put it, this is the future of its business. But as the company explains here, this growth was mainly driven by new clients. Illumin has onboarded 29 new clients this quarter, okay, as well as higher platform utilization by existing clients. So we have new clients arriving, which is great, but on the other hand, we are also seeing that the clients that are already using this platform are starting to use it more, which is also great to see. Besides, another important point is that, as the company said in its conference call, even though we did show growth in our self-service business, both year over year and as a percentage of total revenue, we believe self-service is still in the very early stages of its potential. So let's keep this in mind, okay? As I've stated before, we see customers utilizing the platform today as early adopters. So if the company is saying that the self-service segment is in its early stages, what I take from this is that in the long run, we may see much more growth here. Oh, and by the way, this platform I'm using to read Illumin's earnings call transcript is called Seeking Alpha, and I will leave a link to it in this video's description with a 1-week free trial and a 10% discount. Now, what I didn't like to see was that, though we are seeing a remarkable growth in the self-service division when compared to 1 year ago, when compared to last quarter, revenue has actually declined a little. And while I don't believe this affects the structural thesis, I think it's important to keep an eye on this, okay? But anyway, let's go back to Illumin's financials. Additionally, we are also seeing the managed service segment starting to grow again, which is a great sign. And the programmatic part of the business is also showing strong growth at 38.5%, which is very good. So when it comes to revenue, we are seeing a solid growth. Now, what I keep wondering is what will happen next quarter, because the end of the year tends to be the strongest period for advertising. And if you look at Illumin's financial history, you will see that the fourth quarter is indeed their strongest. So for the next quarter, I expect we will see even higher revenue. Additionally, with interest rates dropping, my expectation is that this will likely also accelerate Illumin's growth in the near future. So looking forward, that's what I expect to see. Now, talking about Illumin's gross margin, gross margin expanded a little bit from 46.9% to 47.3%, which is not a huge margin expansion, but it is still good to see. But as we can read here on Illumin's earnings call transcript, in addition to a focus on growth, we also continue to prioritize improving operational efficiencies throughout our organization. Despite higher expenses due to investments in key areas, our gross margin remained consistent at 47% on a year-over-year basis. So with that in mind, I understand that once these investments in key areas are made, the gross margin should be able to expand a little bit more. That's what I'm taking from this. Now, going down, operating expenses have increased from almost 17 million to almost 18 million, which represents a 6.5% increase. However, since gross profit has grown much more than operating expenses. By the way, gross profit went up by 23.7%. But since we have this operational leverage, even so, we ended up with a less negative operating result, with the company losing less money, as we can see here. So if last year the company posted an operating loss of almost $3 million, now this loss has dropped to around $770,000, which, if you think about it, is a considerable improvement. So in my opinion, Illumin just needs a little more growth for this to turn positive. Now, if we look at the bottom line closely, we'll see something curious, because though Illumin lost less money here, its final result was actually worst this quarter when compared to the same period last year, when the company was showing positive numbers here. But this is due to the foreign exchange gain we had here and the tax benefit we also had last year, which didn't occur this quarter. But as we can see here, Illumin is almost there. In my opinion, this company just needs a little more growth for profits to show up. And I really think this will happen in the long run. Now let's talk about Illumin's balance sheet. Now honestly, not much has changed here. We saw a reduction in cash and cash equivalents, but on the other hand, there wasn't any significant increase in liabilities. So the company remains in a very good net cash position of around $50 million. Now, still talking about the cash Illumin has on its balance sheet, according to what the company says here, this cash is expected to be well utilized. But let me read this to you. We recognize the importance of a strong balance sheet to the valuation of Illumin and remain committed to ensuring that we utilize our substantial cash reserves in a manner that is optimal for the strategy and future of the company. All options, including synergistic acquisition opportunities and share repurchases, will only be undertaken under a structure of continued overall revenue growth and strong consistent cash flow from operations. So what I take from this is that Illumin won't just burn the cash. They will only use it if it's operationally feasible. And lastly, looking at Illumin's cash flow generation, the company posted positive operating cash flow this quarter, which is great to see. However, the operating cash flow margin that Illumin has delivered this quarter of 3.5% was considerably lower than what we've seen in the previous ones, especially 1 year ago when the company delivered a remarkable 32.1% operating cash flow margin, as we can see here. But I think we'll still see this company's cash flow generation improving, recovering, right? Anyway, one negative point is that Illumin didn't generate free cash flow this quarter because of a $2 million capex. And here I accounted for additions to intangible assets, which I think is important to take into account when we are dealing with a technology company. So for me, these were the most important points of Illumin's Q3 results. So in summary, more clients are arriving while the existing ones are using more the platform. Besides, the other business segments are also growing while gross margin is expanding a little, though they've not reached profitability yet. But in my opinion, this may change soon. Additionally, Illumin's balance sheet remains strong with lots of cash, while the company is already generating cash flows, though cash flow margins have been decreasing, as we've seen. And lastly, about my expectations, well, in the long run, I believe Illumin will keep growing, and there will be a point in which this growth will lead Illumin to profitability because of the operating leverage. And they are actually not far from it. And as this happens, I expect it to be reflected in Illumin's cash flow generation. And ultimately, as a consequence, I don't think that Illumin will keep trading at the current valuation levels. Well, anyway, that's it for today. I just wanted to cover the key points from Illumin's recent results. I hope this was helpful, and see you next time.